listening to Grace, Geltman, and Weld on the Hammer Factor. Take it away, boys.
Well, that has yet to be seen.
Welcome to Hammer Factor episode 50. My name is John Grace, show producer here at the Hammer Factor. I'd like to welcome my co-host, policy director for the Outdoor Alliance, Lewis Geltman, and the island crossing kayak pioneer. How about that title?
That's my thing.
John Weld.
Right. That's my thing. You get on an island, I'll cross it.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to do a whole show here of your... I'm just interested in how you got into this thing of crossing islands with a kayak.
Once you get started, once you do one, you just get hooked. The next thing you know, you're just crossing islands everywhere. This is what you do.
Episode 50. All right.
Can you believe there are people who have listened to all 50 episodes of this show, and that means they have listened to us talk for 100 hours?
I really can't believe it.
That's honestly more than my wife has listened to me in our entire 20-year marriage. There are people out there who probably know me better than my wife.
You know, and we're picking up like another 50 subscribers every week. It's nuts. Big thanks to everybody who put in a review on our iTunes page. That was really cool. Did you guys see any of those reviews?
I've not.
We've got some raving reviews on iTunes. Big thanks to all our listeners. Before we get into this episode of the Hammer Factor is brought to you by Four Corners River Sports in Durango, Colorado. Located on the banks of the Animas River, Four Corners has been helping customers get on the river since 1983. With a great selection of whitewater boats, gear, and accessories, we can help facilitate any of your kayaking needs. We have the ability to ship boats, boards, and gear nationwide and offer especially affordable shipping rates to Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and parts of Wyoming. We also offer free shipping on any accessory orders over $100. In addition to a well-stocked retail stores, Four Corners is home to a full-service kayak school. We offer classes for paddlers of all abilities, age 6 through 100 years old. Whether you're looking to improve your role or learn more about river running, our top-notch ACA certified instructors can help you build your skills. Though this season's snowpack may be less than what we'd hoped, there's still plenty of paddling to be done in the Four Corners region. Four Corners is the last stop before the Grand Canyon, as well as many of the other desert multi-days. And we are the premier sponsor of Animas River Days, one of Colorado's oldest whitewater events held on June 2nd. Here's the kicker. Use the promo code HAMMERFACTOR, that's all caps, HAMMERFACTOR, 10% off your next online order. So there you go, Hammer Factor Nation.
Are you guys, I don't want to, I hate to like subtract from the positive nature of Four Corners, but have you guys heard what happened to Andy Cora's kid?
I did hear a little brief thing on that. Yeah, I did.
Andy Cora is the guy who owns Four Corners. Is he the sole owner, or is there more people involved? Do you know?
I think he's the co-owner. I think it's a partnership.
Okay, yeah. His kid jumped up on a retaining wall and fell off this thing. It was kind of a weird situation, but he sort of fell like, I don't know, 15, 20 feet on a pavement and got a traumatic brain injury, but he's been in the hospital for a while. I spent some time on his Caring Bridge page the other day, just sort of going through it. It looks like he's recovering, which is great. I mean, he's conscious and he's moving around, but God, man, how scary is that?
It's so scary. I mean, it's crazy how thin the line is between just everything going good and everything going bad,
Yeah. Especially, I mean, this past 2 weeks in paddling, right?
Yeah. The past 2 weeks have been really hard here in the Southeast. A young man, 20-year-old guy, drowned Saturday on the Green River Narrows at Go Left. Matthew Ray, he was an awesome kid, and I say kid, he was a man. But, to me, he was a kid, and it's hard when it's on your home river, and it's hard when it happens back to back, and I don't know. I have more to say on that in the future. But right now, it's just like, man, be thankful. Look around you and be thankful, and don't just take moments for granted. Be careful, everyone. Anyway.
I think Andy, it seems like they're doing some fundraising out there for Andy's kid. So if you guys are part of the community, I would take a second, take a look at it. Talk about a family who's committed to the sport. That Andy Cora certainly falls into that category.
Oh, yeah.
So
There's no joke there. We have a packed show here today. Man,
I think we're shooting for 4 hours. Today's the 4-hour show.
this one could definitely go on a long time, but we are going to keep it under an hour. Guaranteed.
You think?
Not happening. No way it's going to happen. But we do have a packed show. We got an anonymous boat review guy back.
Which is awesome.
A lot of people have been requesting the ABRG, so ABRG is back on this show. We have Doc Rocco, our in-house pathologist, who is going to basically give us the lowdown on Lyme disease and other vector-borne illnesses. If you don't know what
I think it's going to blow some minds. That's my prediction. I think I'm going to give a little teaser here. Stay tuned for this one because there is going to be some controversy. I can feel it. First of all, as you know, we live, it's no longer science. People have opinions on science now, and those are as valid as science itself, which leads me to believe that we're going to have a lot of people opining on this show.
Yeah. Well, vector-borne illness, if you don't know what vector-borne illness is, it's basically diseases that are carried by bugs, mosquitoes, ticks, that sort of thing. So, yeah, Doc Rocco is going to give us the lowdown on that. It's spring season. There's Lyme disease, ticks, all kinds of things going out there. We got viewer mail. All of that is coming up. But first, I would like to throw the mic over to Louis Geltman. Louis, fill us in on your world. Where are you at right now? You're not at home, and what's going on?
Oh, back in DC again after a all too quick, week back home. But I did get out to go do a sweet Middle Fork trip out in Idaho last week when I was back home. Man, 3 or 4 of my really good buddies from growing up, all guys who went to Valley Mill. What, Grace?
Valley Mill!
Yeah, just Neil Schott, Matt Polak, Tim Bragan, special guest appearance by Ryan Bond. These guys, with the exception of Ryan, these are all guys who just basically quit kayaking when we were 13 or 14 years old and have gotten back into it in the last couple of years and got them out. We did a just glorious preseason middle salmon trip last weekend. Just I don't know, just super good water, hot springs. Nobody else out there. Just so fun to be out there with those boys. So that was sick. Now I'm back in DC again. But we have, there's a really cool event going on this week. The 2 of our climbing advocacy organizations, Access Fund and American Alpine Club, host this fly-in event called Climb the Hill. And it was just it was really cool last year. A ton of famous pro climbers like Alex Honnold, Tommy Caldwell, Sasha DeJulian, Kai Leitner, just badass famous pro climbers in town to go make the rounds and do some lobbying on the hill on a bunch of public lands issues. And I don't know, last year it was super cool, just filling up the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee room with staffers and congressmen who are there to hear these guys talk about public lands and what it means to them. And I think that it was a pretty cool experience for these pro climbers to kind of, I don't know, just make the rounds in DC and kind of get a little more of a window into public lands advocacy and hopefully go back and keep pushing that stuff with their sort of media profile. So that's going on again this week. And we got, I don't know, the climbers groups have organized a bunch of, pretty badass members of Congress to come talk, Senator Wyden, who's led the charge on that recreation, not red tape bill. Senator Cantwell's coming to talk. So it's going to be cool. Stoked to be here with all these guys. And yeah.
Do you think, it seems like Pruitt's on the way out. True or false?
I just I feel reading tea leaves with the Trump administration is a tough game to play,
Let's suppose he is showing the door. What does that mean? Anything to you in your job, or is it more of a zinky?
I mean, our stuff is much more interior and Forest Service. Or I shouldn't say our stuff, but the work that we do is much more focused on interior and the Forest Service. But, EPA is obviously super important for, protecting clean water, protecting clean air. And that stuff has an impact on all of us for sure. It's hard to say how much better things would potentially get if Pruitt left. I mean, they just confirmed his number 2 guy, who presumably would become the acting administrator if he were kicked out, and he, came from his job as a coal lobbyist. So, I mean,
they're lined up.
Right. All right, I hear you. Okay.
You got a deep bench of people with a certain worldview and a certain list of supporters.
Let me ask you this, Lewis. When all these climbers are in DC, are you personally walking them around? How does that happen? Like, give me like the visual of what's happening. Do these guys show up? Are they dressed in suits, or like, how's it happen?
Yeah, so these guys will show up, and we'll do like a big day of training for these folks who are, it's not just famous pro climbers. It'll also be people who run like local climbing advocacy groups. Maybe it's their first time in DC, maybe not. But we'll do like a day of kind of lobby training. It's all down at the REI down on like over in Northeast has made some space for us. And so we'll kind of coach these guys up on how to do these meetings. And then the next day, everybody will put their suit on and, kind of break up into little, smaller groups and go have meetings with congressional offices. So I'll go on a group with, I don't know, some of these folks. I saw who's on my group, and it's nobody it's not Alex Honnold. But
You're like the C-listers.
Yeah, probably. I don't know anything about climbing anyway, so it's probably for the best.
Well, we're going to keep this thing under 3 hours, so let's get right into some viewer mail here, because I believe we got Doc Rocco coming on right at 4:20, correct?
Yeah. No, the only voicemail, the actual like recording we got, like a voicemail, was a butt dial this whole week.
Our anonymous Canadian may have just poo-pooed that.
That's what I'm thinking. Did he ruin the voicemail?
I don't know.
Was his call annoying enough for people to say, okay, this is done. It's over.
I thought Fred brought it back, though, Fred came in with a legit comment, and it was like super concise, value ridden. I don't know.
Right, that's true.
Maybe.
And then who has the voicemail number for Hammer Factor on their phone in such a way that they can butt dial it? Presumably they made a shortcut on their home screen, or
presumably it was Canadian Joe Pesci, right? He was like the only recent caller.
I was listening to the voicemail, and I could hear something going on in the background. So I think they were like calling.
Can we just play that?
Calling
it was like a half-hour long call. Let's play that.
I think
it couldn't be that much worse, right?
I think it was cold feet. I think someone was calling to lay into us, and they were like, "Oh, I'm not gonna do it." They just set the phone down, and then you could hear something in their car. Anyway, we'll see.
John Grace's stalker just breathing into the phone for 30 minutes.
Anyway, bring on the voicemails. I love the voicemails. It's way better than me stumbling through my words like I'm getting ready to do right now with Andy McMurray's email. Andy comes back. This comes from the McMurrays, not just Andy, him and his wife. I'll get to the meat of it here. Your podcast features some awesome and experienced guests who can offer so much more than a discussion of shark versus bear or asking about the size of Nicole's pseudo trust fund to sustain her lifestyle. Well, I don't know how you get away with the things you say half the time. Instead, how about asking Nicole what it's like to be a female paddler that runs hard whitewater in a male-dominated sport, how to find the right group of women to paddle with, or the benefits of paddling with women versus men. Regarding Jared, generational paddling families are still few and far between in the history of the sport, and asking more questions about these topics versus giggling with side commentary would make the listening experience a much more enriching one. Your podcast has great access to a wealth of whitewater knowledge, including you three hosts. Put it to use, ! Perhaps put some more foresight into the guest content to make it shine.
Oh, McMurray.
Geltman, go ahead. You take this one. Keep me out of the fire.
Well, the thing about Nicole is, I think that if she wanted to talk about that, that would have been fine. But I think that we've been pretty conscientiously trying not to just have women guests on and being like, you're here to talk about women's issues, stay in your lane. Nicole knows a lot about a lot, and it's not just about, being a woman kayaker. She's a kayaker.
So you're saying that Hammer Factor's a safe space people can go and just be a kayaker.
Just honestly, like we have not done a great job of having women guests on. It's like, and when we do have women guests on, we don't want to just be like, you're here to talk about the ladies stuff. It's like, we want you to be here. You know, Nicole is an expert in all sorts of things, and you know, she can talk about whatever she wants to talk about, and we have all sorts of stuff. I mean, I thought that her conversation was great, and you know, if anybody wants to come on and you know have that conversation about, you know, being a woman in a male-dominated sport, like we're happy to have that conversation, but we don't want to.
And we'll mansplain to you while you're full of it when you do that.
Exactly. And then with Jared, we wanted to have a bigger conversation with Jared, and we'll definitely have the Silers back on another time, but we were like 3 hours in, and we can't not talk about the most important thing, which is shark versus bear. So,
right, which will go down as an iconic segment of the show, I think.
From her email, I think something we need to kind of think about a little bit is that we are so inside baseball and we take so much for granted that we know about. I think that maybe we could do a little better job of, you know, whatever.
I don't know. Am I about to launch on this?
No, I feel like we're talking
you're
about
not.
something we want to talk about, which is seems to be of interest to some other people. So I don't know.
Well, let's just kind of contrast that with Rhett Flowers' email here. Rhett says the contrast between the statistical analysis and the Siler analysis made this the best and funniest show yet. Which, outside of hanging the elephant commentary, that was really funny. I don't know if you ever.
I was definitely reduced to tears during that.
It really was. I mean, it was. The Silers are brilliant in many ways.
Right.
This comes from Robert Scanlon. It's very different finding a paddling crew if you didn't grow up paddling all your life, or if you moved to a new place and aren't as well connected in the paddling world since you're not Hammer Factor famous. Hammer Factor famous, okay? If you're not on the Hammer Factor, it takes a lot of awkward Facebook group posts asking someone to go paddling with you. Then you get to paddle with a wide cast of colorful characters, most of which, while they might or might not be good people and or paddlers, you would never want to be in a crew with. In my experience, it just took a lot of patience and eventually luck to find a crew. My biggest suggestion is to paddle easier rivers while trying to find a crew. It's a lot easier to form positive relationships with other people when everyone is relaxed and having fun versus when you're gripped and the guy that's supposed to be showing you down is swimming. It's anecdotal evidence, but most of the people I paddle with today are people I met on rivers that were at least a class below what we're both capable of paddling. Good luck, Rob. Hey, that's a good one.
Well, that was good advice. That's why I threw it in there.
Because we offered no value on that.
Right, none. That's why exactly.
Yeah, trying to find people to go kayaking with on the internet. It's like, I feel like, to overly generalize, you're going to get two sets of people. You're going to get the people who just moved there and are looking for somebody to go paddling with, and then you're going to get the people who've been living there and people don't want to go kayaking with for whatever reason, so they're reduced to looking for people to paddle with on the internet. And that's like the matchmaking process, is like you're showing up and you're meeting the people who have rubbed everyone else the wrong way and are looking for someone to go kayaking with.
Right, it's like dating in your 40s. It's fraught with minefields.
We should start some app that's like the Tinder for kayaking crews. Connor Sayers. Let's move on here. We are going to just bust through these, man, because we're like on time almost. Connor says, I'm an associate of DR and JR, the de facto curator of the Northwest Cascadia Strategic Outburst Reserve, the NWCSOR. I had the opportunity to paddle an outburst on the GC, I'm assuming he's referring to the Grand Canyon, a number of years ago, and Tim Kennedy's statement on an earlier program, amazing front surfing on bigger waves, would be a great Grand Canyon boat with raft support, should be considered an understatement. There is no better Grand Canyon boat. The Dagger Outburst, especially when paired with a handmade wooden paddle of optimal length and offset, is a big water weapon of mass destruction. Connor has some other links and some photo evidence of this, which we will include in the show notes. But I'm telling you, I'm getting an outburst, just so you know.
Well, okay, so let me ask you a question. Shane made this. I saw Shane at Cheat Fest this weekend, and they had that new home slice.
Okay.
The new Slicey or, playboat. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a step in the right direction, or should they be going more towards the outburst crowd? The outburst type boat. Bigger, longer, faster.
Well, I think that like a Brap is kind of in that ballpark.
Maybe a small Brap. I keep beating Shane up about this.
I want a longer Brap.
I want a longer Brap too.
You want an outburst. That's what you want. That's what you're describing.
But I want a little more rocker in the
Brap's
front.
better, yeah.
I know. I'm not saying exactly the outburst, but I'm saying that type of boat.
I think a 10-foot Brap would be the bee's knees.
Yeah, like I'm all about the home slice, and I love all of this stuff. But when are we going to get a family of Braps? Like the horse is dead, but I'm going to keep kicking it.
The thing is, here's the thing for me, right? Is I don't really want 3 boats. I want 2 boats. You know what I mean?
What?
I just don't want to deal with it. I want like
how the hell are you going to get by with 2 boats?
Yeah, that's a good question. Wait. Let's back up here. So
okay, I do have more than 2 boats, but
what's your 2-boat quiver?
Let me just put it this way.
So you're going to attain what's your attainment boat?
Normal boaters out there want 2 boats. They want a creek boat, and then they want a fun river running boat.
You're pushing things in the wrong direction, man. It's like if you do that, then you're making every boat suck because 2 boats is not sufficient.
I agree with Lewis on this 100%.
All right.
You need like 7 or 8 boats.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take 7 or 8 different size Braps. Anyway,
you need like at minimum you need a modern longboat, a creek boat, a Brap lake boat, maybe a playboat.
No, listen. All I need. Here's what I need. Here's the boats I need. I need a creek boat, a good creek boat. I need a Brap or something like the Brap. I don't want anything shorter. I don't want anything more playful. I don't want a playboat. Not into it. And a boat for attaining, which for me is a full-length downriver boat.
Yeah, that's fine. But then, like, I don't know, like if you look at the Potomac, you need a slalom boat for sure. And like once you get out west, you need dude, even in the Southeast, everybody needs a longboat, man. Just for like cruising, you need a longboat.
I think that everybody needs. I think your statement is flawed, Weld, in that people can only afford a couple of boats, but they want and need, 6 or 8 for sure. It's just my opinion. I mean, you need a couple of old school boats. You need like some outbursts. You need some like.
I paddled the green for a while, and it just was boring after a while. It just reminded me of boats I paddled for 30 years getting up to this point. You know what I mean? It just wasn't that interesting.
But you're going to want to go back to it at some point.
If I want to go fast, I'll go my DR boat, But then if I want to paddle the upper Yak, I'll paddle the Brap. That's all. But
you need it for like, I don't know, like for doing like a Toto white salmon where you just want to like crush out 20 miles or like doing Middle Fork salmon, self-support.
Overnighter on the Grand, exactly.
All right, that's the thing. You see,
you need to see
I'm not exposed to that kind of whitewater yet, but maybe if that day ever comes, I will reconsider my position.
This is a rabbit hole we're not getting out of. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
Dave Gardner. Hey, Hammer Factor crew. Thanks for making a great podcast. I think episode 49 was the best episode yet. The bear versus shark debate was eye-opening. Maybe I missed the episode and you guys already discussed this, but it seems like it's starting to become a problem, especially on rivers in the West. Pack rafts. In my opinion, they are even worse than subs. It seems a lot of people paddle them often. They don't want to take the time to actually learn to kayak and are choosing to become pack rafters. There is no reason someone should paddle a pack raft when you can drive to the put-in and take out of a run, and they seem especially ridiculous on roadside roads, such as the Lochsa in Idaho. I've seen them on social media as self-supporting the Grand Canyon. It seems to me the only time they are acceptable in whitewater is when paddled by an already competent kayaker on easy whitewater that requires a 10-plus hike to or from the put-in or takeout. Again, these are my very opinionated thoughts on the subject. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about it. I'm sure it might ruffle some feathers. Keep up the great work, Dave Gardner. What do you think of that, boys?
I'm revising my earlier statement. I just need a creek boat, a Brap, and a pack raft. That's it.
I mean, I want to get a pack rafter on the show. I've never been pack rafting.
I don't get it. I mean, I just don't understand where I'd use one. I haven't fully formed a poo-poo in my mind yet, but I just don't know where I would want one. Like the Middle Kings, I mean, you wouldn't do the Middle Kings of Packraft. Right?
No. But if you were going to do some for your island hopping obsession, you don't think a pack raft would be a good tool to get that done?
No.
Dude, I could. Anyway.
Yeah, or maybe if you're going somewhere where the whitewater isn't the point, it's just crossing a big landscape. I mean, I guess I agree that it seems silly to me if you're just paddling a pack raft for the sake of paddling a pack raft, but maybe those guys are all out training for some savage mission. I don't know. I've never seen anybody just paddling a pack raft.
Yeah, I want to get a pack raft. If you're a pack rafter, you're into pack rafting, you want to come on here and defend pack rafting. I just like saying pack rafting. I'm not sure why, but if you're a pack rafter and you want to talk about pack rafting.
I know a couple guys we could have come on.
I've never seen a pack raft in the wild. To me, it'd be like seeing Sasquatch or something.
Yeah,
like a blurry photo.
That's how it should be, right? It's if you have a pack raft, that's where you should be. You should be Sasquatch country.
Right, you'd have to zoom in, magnify 40 times. It'd be a grainy silhouette of something that may or may not be a pack raft.
Yeah, we're done here. Yeah.
All right, Lewis, get your guy. Let's talk pack rafting. Our first and only.
Talk pack rafting. He's a pack rafting enthusiast.
Who's that? I missed that.
Colburn. He's done some cool stuff out in Montana. He's into it. Some boys up in Alaska. This guy Forrest McCarthy, he used to work for Winter Wildlands Alliance and ski guides down in Antarctica and stuff. He's runs the American Pack Rafting Association now, I think. He's up to all sorts of savage shit.
American Pack Rafting Association.
The APA?
The very same.
The APRA.
We're going to have to get the ABRG to do a review of the APA. Anyway, Hammer Factor athlete Noah Weaver. Longtime listener, it looks like. If you don't know Noah, Noah is a...
and you don't know Noah. And we're kind of ruining it, to be honest.
We kind of are. But I don't know if we are or not. I think it's kind of our job to shed light on the righteousness that exists on our rivers.
But I think we're also maybe setting that righteousness up as more rare than it really is, because there are a lot of under the radar ballers out there who
would know.
Those in the know.
Well, it's our job to expose them, I think. And
Where is that?
So Noah writes in, "Hey guys, heard the Shark versus Bear episode the other day. Excited to hear you're my new sponsor." So he says, in quotes, "Doing nothing in kayaking is hard, and whenever I can is one of my specialties. A quality that is lost on most people. I'm glad to hear you appreciate the hard work. But in all seriousness, thanks for the shout out, and I would love to come talk kayaking anytime you need to fill a space. I'm in Knoxville and come to Asheville pretty often. I'm heading out to the North Fork Championship and then to work on the white salmon in a month or so, but there is always a way to communicate these days. Cheers, Noah."
Well, if Noah came on the show, that would be the end of his sponsorship.
True. But you know what?
That's the irony of the paradox of being sponsored.
Can you really be the avatar of this idol that we're holding up if you're coming from Asheville and moving to white salmon? Is that contrary to your the image that we're trying to?
Look, he's just
North Idaho, obviously.
Idaho, right? Exactly. With the rest of the crazies.
He's just coming out there to get savage. But anyway, I think that we can talk about that because it's not him talking about himself. It's us shedding light on him. So I think it's legit. Noah will be on the show. Noah, I'll reach out to you sooner than later.
Should we break and do Doc Rocco and finish up the rest of these emails?
Yeah, man, this is a really good one about the fluid dynamics and the classes of boats.
I know, it's great. That's why I was thinking we should break.
Okay, let's get Doc Rocco on the phone.
I'm gonna come back. We'll come back to these emails. I definitely want to get to these.
Okay, this is a really good one. This could be an entire show, and I love the whole thing with the riblets because I'd never heard of the riblets, and I will be paddling with riblets.
Neither have I. I'm all about the riblets. Although I get those vegetarian microwave riblets, which stink up the entire house.
That whole line of conversation, just I start hearing Billy Hearn in my ear talking about the various ways to treat your hull to get more speed.
I'm trying to picture you as a 14-year-old staring starry-eyed at Billy Hearn as he explains this to you.
I mean, I remember all the answers, man. The answers.
You and Bond just looking at him, mouths agape.
Oh, God.
Billy wearing like a Boynton tank top and like gym shorts and high tops, tennis shoes. All right, let's get Doc Rocco on the phone. I hate to push this, but he's a medical professional.
Well, Doc Rocco, welcome to the Hammer Factor, and we are excited to hear what you have to say about some of our vector-borne illnesses that we're dealing with recently.
All right. Very good. Very good to be on. Thanks for having me.
So let's get your credentials first. So identify that you have some knowledge of the subject.
Yep. So I am a pathologist, infectious disease pathologist. I run the microbiology lab here at West Virginia University, and we make diagnoses of Lyme and other vector-borne disease illnesses pretty regularly. But I should qualify, I don't actually see patients as a laboratorian, so I'm not on the front lines prescribing medications or making clinical diagnoses.
So, like, this would meaning what? Like what? Give an example of the kind of stuff you're typically doing.
Well, so for an infectious disease doc sees a kid in the clinic and thinks he or she may have Lyme. Mm-hmm. So they will collect the appropriate samples, send them to our lab, and we will perform testing and either confirm their clinical suspicion or say, it's not Lyme disease.
So you've been on the show before talking about a whole, wide array of odd diseases. I mean, you see more than just Lyme, obviously. You see all sorts of odd stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of common stuff and some odd stuff every now and again.
Right. So, and Rocco's been on the show before. He's actually lives down the street from me, and you find his job to be endlessly interesting. But so this is how this segment got started. We were talking. This is a while ago, maybe 6 months ago or something. I was talking with him, and I was like, we need to get a Lyme's vaccine, because I'm under the impression, at the time that. I knew a few people, certainly I have a guy in mind who lives in our area who got Lyme's disease and could not get rid of it, and he called it chronic Lyme's disease. And he looked wrecked, and it's something that he'd been dealing with for a long time. And it's something that, if you live in the East Coast, certainly, and I don't know how prevalent this is on the West Coast, but if you live in the East Coast, Lyme's disease is a thing. I mean, it's all around, and ticks are all around. It's just a matter of time before I got this. And, I'm thinking I'm going to get this and I'm going to get chronic Lyme's and it's going to ruin my life like it has with other people. And Rocco's response was, why? You shouldn't be worried about Lyme's disease because you take penicillin and it goes away. And I said, well, how about chronic Lyme's as a thing? And I'll let you take it from here, Rocco. You said that.
Yeah. Well, so it's doxycycline is the treatment of choice, not penicillin, but the... Yeah, it's so chronic Lyme disease. I mean, there are two camps of thought on this, and I don't want to dismiss outright the fact that people who legitimately have Lyme disease, who are treated with a full course of antibiotics, may have continued symptoms down the road. We should point out, though, that that's the small minority of people who actually have legitimate Lyme disease will go on to have, what's been termed chronic Lyme.
So wait a second. So does that mean that they have Lyme's disease, or they have some kind of something messed up something in their organs and the symptoms remain? How does that work? Like a friend of my wife, she had what they call a chronic Lyme's disease for like 2 years. And I talked about this with Chelsea before you were going to come on the show. And basically she was sleeping for like 20 hours a day and was super tired and all kinds of things. And it was just understood that she had chronic Lyme's disease. What does that mean? What is that?
Well, I mean, that's the $1 million question, really. By many practitioners, what it means is that we haven't cleared the infection, that there's symptoms persist, therefore the infection must still be ongoing. And so the answer to that in their view, is to give more antibiotics and really long durations of antibiotics. At least that's one plan of approach. There are many other alternative therapies, I think, that people entertain. But the real crux of the question is, are the bacteria still present? Is the infection really lasting that long? And by really all accounts, there's very little evidence to suggest that after the initial course, and certainly after an extended course of an IV antibiotic, which is sometimes given for more severe cases of Lyme disease when it involves the brain or the heart, after that 3-week course of antibiotics, there's very little evidence to suggest that there's persistent Borrelia, that the spirochete's still present. So there are other reasons that that symptoms could persist. However, I mean, there are autoimmune phenomena that occur after a variety of different kinds of infections that can lead to long-term symptoms. But again, it's pretty unusual for that to happen. And in Lyme, it's certainly the minority of patients. And I should also point out, you have complaints of fatigue, just general body aches. Symptoms are like, altered mentation. It's difficult to recall facts and that sort of thing. And those symptoms are fairly nonspecific. They're completely subjective, so there's no way to actually measure an improvement, from an outside, from a doctor's perspective. And it's nebulous. I mean, there are a lot of other diseases with similar vague symptomatology. And so it then also becomes difficult to actually track, this quote-unquote chronic Lyme population, because it's muddied by, potentially all these other psychosocial or, clearly non-Lyme related symptoms that overlap, if that makes sense.
I mean, my takeaway from your conversation was that these people who say they have chronic Lyme's, they may have some kind of chronic problem, but it's not Lyme's disease. Am I understanding that correctly or no?
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, what do you mean by Lyme disease? Is it an active Borrelia infection? I think probably not.
But it still seems probable or possible that it's something that was triggered by the initial Lyme disease. So whether or not it's indicative of something active in the body is sort of academic in a way, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's certainly something that's continuing to be investigated. And for the people who suffer from it, if it is clearly linked to a prior infection, obviously it's, of practical importance. But I just think that there's a lot of momentum behind this idea that I had a tick bite and, 2 years later, I'm still not feeling like I used to. And I think it's kind of a stretch to pin everything on, on Lyme disease.
Interesting.
So I'm not a huge proponent of the term chronic Lyme.
Interesting. So you see it as if someone comes in with the actual bug that gives you Lyme's disease, you feel like some high percentage of the time you can treat it, and with a doxycycline or something like that, and it is gone from the body. You cannot detect it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, can we back up just a little bit while we got you here, because you are obviously a wealth of knowledge. As people who play in the woods, go mountain biking, kayaking, that kind of thing, what vector-borne illnesses are we looking at right now? And I'd also like the most common things that you see. What are the worst things you see? And then finally, seen some articles lately that there's a big increase in these cases. Is there actually more of these vector-borne diseases around, or is there just more reporting of them?
Yeah, so I'll take the last question first, because that's actually, there was a CDC report a couple weeks ago that basically showed the overall annual incidence over about a 15-year period. And clearly, the numbers are increasing, and I don't think there's any question to that. Part of that, and I think there are a variety of factors that account for why we're seeing increases in these numbers. For Lyme, in particular, I mean, I think more as more people are made aware, they're more likely to go see a physician for suspected cases, or even following a tick bite, even in the absence of clinical symptoms. So there is more widespread recognition, and therefore by default probably higher levels of reporting. It's almost certain that the numbers in that CDC report are really only the tip of the iceberg of actual incidents. So it is probably, I mean, these things are probably much more common than CDC can actually record and tally. In terms of, so there's, so people knowing, being aware of the disease, things like some of these novel emergent, newly emergent organisms, they've probably been around. Things like, John mentioned, he was worried about Heartland virus or Bourbon virus.
That just sounds bad. It sounds like a medical experiment gone awry that escaped into the wild.
Yeah, well, I mean, clinically, these things are, there's been very few cases of either of those diseases, but very severe, high mortality rates. And I think, diseases like this have probably been in the United States for some time. And, our ability to really characterize novel pathogens, things that we've never, to discover something new is, much better than it was 20 or 30 years ago, or even 10 years ago for that matter. So, part of it is recognition of new things much more quickly as they emerge. And then obviously, I mean, climate surely plays a factor. It's maybe not the single most primary, single primary reason, but certainly is contributory to vector populations, right? So temperature and humidity will, factor into the number of mosquitoes that are available to transmit certain viruses. So, yeah.
So we're talking ticks and mosquitoes. These are the things that are transmitting these diseases, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing more and more of these diseases emerge. What kind of things should we, as people around the outdoors a lot, what kind of things should we be looking out for? What are as John was asking, what are the real problems out there?
Well, just in terms of numbers, looking at what's most common. I mean, that's what you're going to see. That's what you're going to most likely be exposed to. So, I mean, Lyme, it sort of depends on where you are, because obviously the prevalence of the causative organism, and therefore the disease incidence, is going to be variable in different places in the country. So you mentioned the Pacific, California and the Pacific Northwest. There are a variety of factors that lead to less, a lower incidence of Lyme in those regions. But, I think Lyme is certainly something that, you should be aware of. And obviously, tick checks at the end of every day is probably a prudent step for anybody who's trouncing through the woods. There are other less common diseases, Anaplasma, Ehrlichia, and the rickettsial agents. So Rocky Mountain spotted fever, you guys I'm sure are familiar with. It's not a very common disease, but, going back to the last conversation we had on the last episode, I mean, I think you just need to be aware of, the risk. And, if you have headaches and a rash, or you're feeling crummy and, you could have been exposed to ticks, then don't ignore it. That's I think the main talking point here.
So let's circle back to Lyme for a second, because I know I feel like this is kind of a hot topic of discussion, at least on, outdoorsy people on the East Coast. What should we make of chronic Lymes and people, the diagnosis thereof? Is this something that we are we're clouding, we're clouding possible treatments for this by misdiagnosing as Lyme disease, or, I mean, what do you think our takeaway from this should be?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because there's really two layers to this. Mm-hmm. So there are the people who have bona fide Lyme disease, mm-hmm. who meet testing criteria and are treated. Mm-hmm. And again, most of those, have no untoward consequences. They recover and are perfectly healthy. Mm-hmm. A small subset may go on to have continuous symptoms. Mm-hmm. But then there's a whole nother group who may probably never had Lyme to begin with, or at least didn't meet the strict testing definition of a laboratory confirmed case. Mm-hmm. And that gets to the, a major problem with Lyme and really many of these vector-borne pathogens. Mm-hmm. And that is that we, unlike a strep infection or a staph infection, where we detect, the laboratory detects the organism from the patient. Mm-hmm. We recover it and we say, yes, you have this infection. Mm-hmm. For these groups of organisms, oftentimes we are not able to detect the pathogen itself. And so we look for a measure of the person's immune response having reacted to that particular pathogen. And so the problem then becomes that, somebody may have an antibody response, an immune response to an organism, but it's not really the same organism. But it can potentially cross-react in our laboratory tests. And so, people will misinterpret laboratory results oftentimes and say, well, it doesn't meet the strict criteria for Lyme positivity, but, there's at least partial reactivity, and so we're going to call that positive. And that's problematic.
What do you say to people who have been sick with Lyme's for years, or that's they're saying they've been sick with Lyme for years? What do you say to them? And they keep seeking treatment for Lyme's disease. Do you think they're chasing this problem down the wrong way, or what's?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I don't want to come across as being, unsympathetic to somebody who feels like they have a legitimate sequelae of, of a prior infection.
I guess I don't know. I mean, I have the same impression of the medical profession as everyone else, is that you kind of assume they're out to do the right thing. But mm-hmm. Is it possible? I mean, is it possible that there's a group of doctors out there that are happy to keep treating this as Lyme disease, even though it's not? Or, is that? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's certainly possible. I mean, I think I'd like to believe that every practitioner has, his or her patient's best interests at heart. Mm-hmm. And certainly there are plenty of anecdotal stories of, various therapies having a positive impact on a particular patient. Mm-hmm. And, if that's the case, if then that's a success story, irrespective of, how it worked or why it worked. And so I think, there is a lot of that, certainly. But, on the flip side, I think, and I'm a microbiologist, an infectious disease person, and so some of the autoimmune things or the non-infectious complications I can't really speak directly to. Mm-hmm. But what I can tell you is that when, antibiotics are used for long, extended treatment courses, you're mm-hmm. talking weeks, months, even years, mm-hmm. There are serious drawbacks or downsides to that. Aside from, promoting antibiotic resistance for bacteria that live in us and on us, there can be direct impacts of having, a catheter for that amount of time directly into your veins. And, there have been many reports of patients being hospitalized due to complications of that type of therapy, mm-hmm. Even deaths related to it. So it's not all bells and whistles.
Do people ever just get over Lyme disease without any medication? Can you just kick it like a cold?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably so, but I'm speculating, but the reason I say probably is because, many people will have been exposed and not develop symptoms, certainly not seek medical care and not get antibiotics. But I don't know. That's pure speculation. It's similar to syphilis, right? I mean, the organism itself is a cousin of the organism that causes syphilis, and that's generally not something that we think of as, self-limited. If somebody doesn't undergo therapy with that spirochete, they're not gonna cure it themselves.
So, is there a problem with not treating Lyme's? Like if you're sick with Lyme's for years and don't get treatment, does that create another set of complications? Long duration, untreated Lyme's disease. Does it get worse and worse and worse and really screw you up?
Right. So the natural history of the disease was really, that led to its discovery. Actually, was people being naturally infected and not being treated during the early, bullseye rash phase. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, the organism is inoculated by the tick. It spreads, locally through the skin, mm-hmm. but once it reaches the bloodstream, it kind of goes all over. And certainly the secondary phase of disease where, a small proportion of patients will have infection in their heart, and it can actually cause what's called a heart block. So you get basically desequencing of your right side and left side, your atria and your ventricles, and you can die of cardiac arrhythmia. It can go to definitely does go to the CNS, to the brain and the layers surrounding the brain, and that can cause pretty severe disease if left untreated. So, yeah, it's not something you want to try to fight on your own for sure.
Man, scary stuff.
Well, you teased this as chronic Lyme's disease isn't a real thing, and I'm more terrified than ever.
Well, listen, I have to get some clickbait at the beginning of the show. Not to get people engaged. So as a takeaway, I guess what you're saying is, by and large, that if we're outside and we should do tick checks, and if we start getting the symptoms you would normally associate with this kind of thing, rashes or this bullseye ring or aches and pains, we should go and get tested.
Yep.
And the test
and fever. Fever for any reason that you can't explain, and particularly if it lasts a day or two.
Right. And so, and you should, and the treatment for this is relatively straightforward, and for a vast majority of people, it should work without any problem at all.
That's correct.
Does DEET fend off ticks?
Oh yeah, I know that one.
All right.
What was it? Oh yeah, does DEET? Yeah. I don't know my acaricides that well. I think it does.
I'm going to say it does.
All right.
So Doc, I think last show I asked you this, but was Lyme's disease created by the government on an island off the coast of Connecticut?
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, John.
I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this because people say it isn't, and a lot of people tell me it is. When was the first reported case of Lyme's disease, and why is it spreading? Why is it seem like it's spreading like wildfire? When I look at that CDC report and I just read some articles about this, and I see like the red all over the map, how does a disease just start like that? And how does is there kind of any evidence about how a pathogen starts like that and then just comes out of nowhere?
Well, there are a couple different modes. So, this was discovered in the late 70s in Connecticut. It had probably, in all likelihood, had been here for a long time prior to that. There are older reports that predate its, discovery in the 70s, describing clinical symptoms that certainly suggest that it was a Lyme-like disease in Europe. So it's been around for a long time. And again, so what leads to the increase? More recognition, more reporting, more misdiagnosis potentially, and then there's no doubt that the vector, the black-legged tick, is increasing, expanding its geographic territory. But there's so many factors that go into tick-borne diseases in particular that it's really hard to put your finger on one one reason that we're seeing this elevated incidence. Now, mosquito-borne diseases are very different. I mean, those are epidemic, and so Zika, for instance, was introduced into this continent recently, and it just exploded because there's mosquito vectors that can transmit it easily, plenty of susceptible hosts, and it just takes off like wildfire. Same with West Nile virus, back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
When are we going to see cases of leishmaniasis here in the States?
Oh, probably
Mid-August.
probably never.
Let's just hope not, because
God.
man, that is a savage thing.
So one last thing, I was at Cheat Fest this weekend, and I was approached by a guy named Big D, who works for Piranha. And if you close your eyes and imagine a guy from the South named Big D, you are seeing exactly what he looks like. But he said that he had not eaten red meat in over a year, which, if you know Big D and you've seen Big D, you realize that's a serious conflict. But because he had been bit by a tick that somehow gave him an allergy to red meat. And I immediately ran over to you thinking fake news. Mm-hmm. And you validated Big D.
Yeah, what is this? This is weird.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I should confess that I sort of poo-pooed the whole thing initially myself. I had not heard of it until John mentioned it, and so started investigating it last night, and it seems like a legitimate thing. It was actually described in Australia a couple decades ago, and hypothesized to be related to tick bites. And sure enough, I mean, they're still working out the details, but it's a tick. It's not the same tick that transmits Lyme, but one that you see more commonly down in the South.
A dog tick?
Called the Lone Star tick.
Lone Star tick. I know those.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're little, unlike Lyme, Ixides, which kind of just hang out and wait for things to pass by, and they just kind of clutch onto them and attached.
That's how I found my wife, by the way, that exact technique.
The Lone Star tick actually can sense vibrations and heat, and will sort of hone in on things.
That's how Grace found his wife.
See, this is why our viewers are writing in and being like, "Can we just get a little deeper than talking about shark versus bears?"
I know. Andy, I'm sorry. Right. So it's a real thing, and so I mean, there's actually a lot of people with this problem. I mean, it's not, from the article I sent you, it sounds like this is like a legitimate thing. I mean, it's
Jesus,
yeah.
This is just horrible stuff.
I mean, there are thousands.
How does it work exactly? I mean, briefly, you get bit by this Lone Star tick, and then what happens?
Yeah, so you're exposed to this carbohydrate that people that we don't make. Okay, and so anything that we don't make that we're exposed to, that our immune system is exposed to, rate an immune response. Mm-hmm. And I think what they're still trying to work out is whether it's coming from the tick, the saliva in the tick, potentially an organism hosted by the tick is carrying, or possibly from a prior blood meal. Although to me that seems unlikely, but they're still trying to figure out where the exposure, the source exposure is coming from. But essentially, I mean, you're exposed to it. Your immune system sees it as abnormal, mounts a very particular type of immune response that, upon re-exposure, it leads to anaphylaxis. This, systemic flushing and rash and potentially airway disturbances. Yeah.
I may just stay inside.
Real quick, Doc, before we let you go. The other day I was doing some trail work, and I did some bushwhacking between trails rather than walk around. I did like a cut through up the side of the hill, and I ended up with 3 ticks. And they got me kind of like in my crotch area. And I pulled them all off, but there was like a little bump where one was. Now, I've been monitoring it. There's no rash or anything, but like, like, how do you know if you did like, how do you, like, I know the ring of the disease and whatever, but how do I know I'm all in the clear? Like, I'm not sick, I don't have any rash or anything there, but like there's still like a bump. Like, like at what point do I need to go to the doctor? Like, and this is for me and for our listeners out there, like, how do you know if you've gotten something from a tick, or is
well, you don't is the short answer. I mean, you sort of have to just watch and wait. Now you want to make sure when you I mean, did you examine the ticks once you'd pulled them out and you made sure that you got all the mouth parts?
Man, I just plucked them out. Was kind of freaked out. Just kind of acted like it didn't.
You didn't get
happen.
the mouth parts, did you?
I got the mouth parts. I thought I did. You know, like I was into it, but I don't know if I got the mouth parts. I really don't. I just know there's one little bump, and it's like a tiny bump. Doesn't hurt or anything like that, but it's definitely got me a little freaked out, especially after this conversation.
I bet the tick was a little freaked out too.
I'm really trying to get to the answer. Like how do we know if I'm infected? What am I looking for? Like,
well, it depends on what the tick is and what it could potentially transmit, because, you know, Rocky Mountain spotted fever and Ehrlichia and Lyme are very, very different illnesses, which would present very differently. So you really don't know. There's, you know, we won't have to go into this, but there's a mound of literature on prophylaxis, on, you know, whether you should, after a tick bite, receive antibiotics to prevent an infection. But, you know, short of just waiting to see if you develop symptoms, I don't really have any good advice.
It was last
So
Thursday.
you want to make sure you get all of the tick out, because, I mean, that's probably the more common reason to have a localized inflammatory reaction at the site.
How many days am I looking at? Like, it was last Thursday. So what? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Am I in the clear yet? Like
you were looking a little peaked there, Grace.
Oh, come on.
Right.
I'm really trying to figure this out. Like, is this, how many days, I mean, when you get a tick bite, can you say, okay, nothing showed up after a week, I'm in the clear? Or can you, like, typically these diseases.
I might give it 10 days. 10 days, 2 weeks. I think beyond that, you'd be pretty safe.
Okay. All right.
Well, you've done it again. You scared us shitless.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on the Hammer Factor,
Thanks,
Dr.
Rocco.
Sure thing,
Rocco.
guys.
Seriously,
Yep.
I know you're a
Talk to you
busy
later.
man. That's
Take care.
awesome. I mean, I know that's a little, like, not cool to talk about, but I'm, like, seriously a little worried about this bump.
I'm just laughing at John Grace, anxiously staring at his crotch and wondering if something's gone awry.
It's like,
You get some flashbacks to college or something there, Grace.
Chelsea, come look at this. Does this look infected?
Well,
All right, let's finish these emails up and get to Honest Boat Review Guy.
if you guys were staring what I was staring at, you'd be worried too. Okay, back on point here. Let's get into this boat dynamics here. Okay, this is from Jordan Luce. All right. Jordan says, "What up, Hammer Factor?" I'll get right to the meat of this. He says, to give a brief background on me, my education is in chemical engineering, in which we take a lot of fluid dynamics classes, so I can sound like I know what I'm talking about. My idea for building a faster whitewater boat comes from thinking of local versus global architecture. I thought this was interesting. To go back a second, this was in discussion of our last episode where we broke down, we had Kenny Unser on, our in-house statistician, to talk about everything green race and speed and progression and that kind of thing. He says, the greatest example I can think of to demonstrate what I'm talking about is with the golf ball. When someone wanted to make a golf ball go further, they didn't change the spherical shape of the ball, global architecture. They changed the surface of the ball to be dimpled surface rather than the flat surface, local architecture. If we take this thinking and apply it to kayaking, we have a ton of changes in global architecture. Edge variations, rocker profile, overall boat shape, but very little architecture. He has some links here He talks about the dimple idea that works on boats and the different forces and flow types at play. This will all be in the show notes. The dimple idea is just one. I think there are several other local architectures, including riblets, which I had never heard about until I read this article, which this is something you can just stick on the bottom of your boat rather than carving it in or making a new mold. That would decrease times as well. Links to a story from Epic Kayaks. And this is super interesting. I want to throw this over to you. And then he finishes with one last question. If your only choice to be on the water forever were creature crafting, supping, or riverboarding, which would you choose? Or would you never go back to the water? Stay east of Jordan. So let's answer that one first.
I mean, that's like saying, if you could take a nothing but a sled to a ski resort, would you continue to go to the ski resort, or you just call it a day?
I'd keep going.
You'd take the sled?
I'd take my SUP.
Keltman, you seem completely stymied by this question.
It sounds like a lot like fuck, marry, kill to me. Maybe that's what we should be doing here.
All right. First of all, let's get back to the boat design. Corin Addison put golf ball divots on the bottom of one of his boats.
The Savage Fury.
Remember that?
The Fury.
And what happened to that? I mean, Corin was already on this tip like 20 years ago.
Here's the thing. I think none of that stuff, I think it all matters if you go into the literature when you're going much faster than you're ever going in a kayak, except maybe when you're planing on a wave or maybe when you're planing coming out of a drop. And the rest of the time, I'm not sure that this stuff actually makes that big of a difference. But I'm sure it would make a difference if you just like sanded the shit out of your boat and took all the little burrs off from like every scratch. But like, to me, beyond that, it's like the low-hanging fruit here is like, just build a composite boat. It's like, you don't need anything that came from like the Department of Defense or like some crazy 3M product that you have to like, I mean, you don't, and you could go to the store right now and buy the materials that you need to build yourself a 20-pound green boat, and like you're gonna like, no matter how fast you are, you're gonna knock like 15 seconds off your time. Like anyone can do that this year. Break that.
No, wrong. Having built many boats,
about this.
having built many boats, all you would do is waste about $300 and get a huge glob of resin in your hair that would be cut out of your head, and then that would be the end of that, and you'd have a huge mess in your yard.
Okay, with some dedicated hobbyist time, you two can build a composite boat and it'll be fast. Like, I mean, it's just like...
No, okay, I won't even take this a further step back. This nerd is just trying to ruin our doping scheme for the green race. That's all there is to it.
Listen, if we combine the doping with the riblets, we're unstoppable. I'm just saying, the riblets thing is cool. You got to read that article.
I think it would be like intimidating from a psychological standpoint.
I will take...
Some guy who's jacked up on human growth hormone showing up at the podium with a ribbed boat. It's all over.
I will give you riblets and HGH, and I'll take a composite boat, and I'll take the composite boat every day.
Oh, you're on. You're so on. I don't know. The riblets are interesting. You got to check that article out.
It's fun to say riblets.
Exactly. There's that too. But I mean,
does a rib become a riblet? Is there a standard for that?
Well, I like where Jordan's going with this, and I think like there's a legitimate like looking out, local architecture versus, what was the other global architecture. I mean, I think there's a legit point there. I think that like maybe it's time after all the changes and whatever to see if there's some other little nuance there. To me, that's interesting.
Skipping the big nuance and going straight to the little nuance. It's like there's just like polyethylene is.
I think Lewis has a point here. Honestly, if there was a way to do this kind of change to a whole design, it would have happened in the past 20 years, and it would have stuck. You know what I mean? We're not that ignorant. I mean, we're not that back-asswards in paddle sports that we would have some influence from real science come in.
The thing about the riblets thing is it's like you're basically putting a powder on the bottom of a boat, and after 3 green runs, it's all going to be scuffed off anyway. So it's like, and if you get the 3M sticker, you're going to have worn it off before you get to the first rapid because it's nothing but rocks. And just
there you go. 8288. If you could paddle nothing but a creature craft or the Green River Narrows every day, what would you pick?
I'm gonna pop my latest HGH and get ready, Lewis.
Can we go into Buena Vista? This email we got from BV.
This comes at us from Mike Harvey. Hey boys, I need Weld's shipping address to send him an Achieve Earl shirt. Weld gave us all here in the Upper Ark Valley who love and admire Earl the vocabulary we needed to describe the path we have been walking. Now we understand clearly that the thing which previously had been so hard to give a name, which we are all striving for, is achieving Earl. Thank you, Weld, for crystallizing our journey so clearly for us. Perhaps the next level beyond Earl is Weld. One step at a time, Grasshopper. And that was sent from his iPhone. I mean, anyway.
I was like so fired up about this email. I don't know Earl. I don't know anything about any of this, but just the fact that there are people listening to this at all is amazing. But taking something that was said on this podcast and turning it into a T-shirt, like, man.
Great design. I mean, what do you think, Weld? Is there going to be an Achieving Weld?
No, I think Earl's where we're going to stop on that one. BV's a weird place. I don't think there's any question about that. I think we're learning more and more about BV the deeper we dive into this.
I agree. You know,
there's Earl, but then there's a dialectical force to Earl. I've studied this. I've studied this at length. And the dialectical force is Selby. It's not an evil force. It's like the anti-Earl.
So there's and they're right there on top of each other. Like it's like the yin and the yang.
Exactly. And then Earl is now working for Selby. Right? I don't know. You could study this for years and never have an answer.
Wow.
Yep.
Final email here. This comes at us from Josh Walden. Hey guys, what is up with people in the boating world saying "ja"? I mean, I understand what the word means after using Google. A lot of times people will put it in front of another word and that makes sense, like "ja bless." But then it seems like they start using it out of context, like "ja rapids," "ja waterfall," and it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why it annoys me. I guess it's because I'm getting older. Who knows?
Well, let's bring on Max Blackburn. Who better to ask a jaw question than Max Blackburn?
Now give us a little background here on why Max is the guy for this.
Well, okay. First of all, he may have been our worst guest ever, but we've had numerous calls for his return so he could seek redemption.
We've had way worse guests than Max.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Max may have saved that show, to be honest.
I laughed way. I measure the quality of the guests by how much laughing we're doing.
All right. Okay. But also Max lives in he is in the epicenter of the jaw movement. Wouldn't you say?
Jaw Columbia River Gorge.
Right.
Jaw Gorge.
Well, I mean, before we call him, does anybody have any kind of answer that they'd like to throw out there?
I mean, I don't know. Out east, I think we just kind of we think it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Yeah, don't you?
You guys are so square. Let's get Stein on the phone here and figure this out.
Hello?
Max Blackburn, you're on the Hammer Factor.
Oh, what do you know?
And he's back. All right, so I'm going to get right into this. This comes from Josh Walden. We decided you were the guy to answer this. Josh says, hey guys, what's up with people in the boating world saying "ja"? I mean, understand what the word means after Googling it. A lot of times people will put it in front of another word and that makes sense, like "ja bless." But then it seems like they start using it out of context, like "ja rapids," "ja waterfall," and it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why it annoys me. I guess it's because I'm getting older. Who knows? What's up with Ja, and how do we bring Josh? How do we describe this?
He's missing an opportunity there if he's still spelling his name Josh.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's one for sure. I'm a little surprised that you guys would have outsourced this to an outside correspondent, given that, at least in my opinion, I think you probably trace the use of the word "ja" in the kayaking community back to the T-Dub crew and the early LVMs.
Really? Is this true?
This is 100% true. But you know what? I'm
Really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So as a young up and coming kayaker in my adolescent and teenage years, I was pretty into the LVMs, as were a few of my friends, and one of our favorite aspects of them were the reggae beats or reggae vibes that you could always count on hearing, at least in those earlier ones. And then, Jah is the Rastafarian name for God, and Rastafarianism and reggae are intertwined, both coming from Jamaica. And, I think regardless of how people felt about the Rastafarian faith or theology, the music in general had such a positive vibe to it that, you listen to it all the way to the put-in, you get to the put-in, and water levels are good, the sun is shining, and, you'd be pretty hard-pressed not to feel like you're ready to praise Jah and feeling pretty blessed. And I don't know how that caught on. And
can we use Jah in a couple sentences that may highlight different uses of this word?
Yeah, I guess, Jah bless and praise Jah would be the obvious ones, but
when would you say that?
Just putting Jah before an object would just be, an accentuation of, the positive nature of that object. So as Josh was getting to, Jah River, you wouldn't say Jah River when talking about a river that you were not particularly excited about.
Do you ever have your cat or you're Jah cat? Is that legit?
I don't know if my feelings about the cat are strong enough to use the term Jah.
Huh.
But he's a grand cat.
He is a good cat.
But not as cool as Jah Lion.
That's the thing, is that Jah cat just doesn't have a good ring to it. If I was going to be referring to the cat, naturally Lion would be coming after the word Jah.
But they haven't seen how big the cat is. If they had actually...
Chris, am I right that this is am I tracing this back to the proper roots here?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's definitely some Jah roots in the LVM. And I think that really to get to the bottom of this, we need to bring the Reverend on the show at some point, and we will do this. We need to bring the Reverend Billy Jones on the show because
absolutely
he is a grandmaster. He can
shed Jah light for sure.
Exactly. There can be Jah light. There can be so much Jah that can be spread from Jah Jones.
Do you think this term is going to hit a peak and then just fall out of fashion like so many other expressions in paddle sports? Or do you think it's here to stay?
Oh, dude, it's been
Should
here
paddlers
for
just accept the fact that it is here?
Oh, it's here.
Max?
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing it go away.
What if you hate?
I put it in the category of church. How far do you guys see church going, and how long do you see that sticking around?
Church was dead.
I thought church is only used ironically anymore.
Right. I thought it was on the way out.
It's funny. It's funny we're talking about this Jah because Woody called me one day. He's like, Grace, what's up? I'm like, oh, nothing. He's like, what the fuck is up with this Jah shit? So there may be more people with that opinion out there than I know. But, I think you have shed light on this, Max, and I think that it's well understood at this point. Does anybody have any other questions?
No, I feel like he was 180 degrees on this call from the last one. My opinion. I think he delivered.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Max, and clearing up everything within Jah world. And, man, Jah bless.
My pleasure.
All right. I'll talk to you a bit.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, dude. Right. Later.
Bye.
Let's get on to anonymous boat review guy. I know that he has been trying all kinds of boats, and we're going to get right into this.
So for those of you not in the know, ABRG came about because we felt like boat reviews were an important part of this program. However, the three of us were too chicken shit to bust out our pals in the industry. So we thought we'd just find somebody to come on to do an anonymous boat review.
And what we have is not only your typical Slicey boat review, but we have half slice boats, like the Brap and the Axiom Ripper Antics, and then we have the full slice boats like the Loki and the Home Slice and the Mixmaster. All right, anonymous boat review guy, are you there?
Yeah, hi guys.
You sound a little bit better this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gone over cold. Happy to be back though.
Well, it's great to have you back on the show, anonymous boat review guy. And I believe that you've had some time in the Slicey boats, and I'd like to just throw it over to you right now and let us know what you think. Let's start with the half slice boats.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be seeing these late 90s and early 2000s making a comeback. I even bleached my spiky hair this morning.
Sweet.
You know, by now, even relative newcomers to the sport have seen river running Slicey designs descended from boats like Dagger's RPM. These boats are characterized by squash tail and a more high volume bow, and we'll call them the half slice designs. And even though Dagger's own RPM resurrection, the Axiom, was quietly gaining fans among beaters and instructors starting back in 2012, we really have to give credit to Pat Keller and the Liquid Logic boys for breathing new life into the half slice design concept with the 2015 introduction of the Brap.
Okay.
True enough.
Yeah, so the Brap is an agile shit runner that can tap into vertical moves. It will make you look good and have fun on the river. It's more fun than a creek boat and gives you a taste of both slalom and freestyle. The Brap got a bunch of hype last year with spurious claims about its potential for dominance at sickline. But it turns out that sneaker marketing budgets dominated sickline, and you won't have to hear more about that bullshit until Red Bull or someone else decides to throw some money away on kayak sponsorships.
Okay. All right.
Fair enough.
Dagger's Axiom is actually a better play boat than even the factory squashed party Brap. Within the half slice category, the Axiom might be the best choice to spice up your local class 3-4 run, but it's more of a beater pleaser that doesn't belong in the class 5 realm. And that leaves a lot of room between the Brap and the Axiom for a boat that can both handle rapids and throw down. Piranha's Ripper really fills that gap nicely. It surfs great, it squirts easily and vertically, it's fun and solid in rapids. It's definitely my number one choice among the modern Slicey river runners.
Okay, where does the Antics fit into your equation?
Well, Piranha killed it with the Ripper. Jackson's awkward attempt just doesn't cut it. They compromised the fun out of this boat. The Antics is a mediocre river runner and a laborious dud in the vertical realm. It's slow, it's bloated, and just generally paddles like an anvil.
Okay, so if you had to rate the Brap, Axiom, Ripper, and Antics 1, 2, 3, and 4, give us your rundown.
I think it's going to come down to your style. A good summary would be that the Ripper is the best all around. The Brap is going to be a better choice for shit runners, while the Axiom is the best playboat of the bunch. The Jackson Antics just isn't worthy of consideration. But I would say, before you buy a half-slice boat, definitely demo. Between models and sizing, there's a lot of nuance. There are some very visible differences in the shapes of the various Ripper sizes. The Brap offers that factory squash party Brap, and with 4 sizes of Axiom, I'd recommend sizing down to really tap its squirting potential.
Okay. Let me ask you, before we get into the full Slicey boats here, anonymous boat review guy, how do you feel about only being one size Brap and the Ripper having 3 sizes? Do you feel like this has added to the credibility of the Ripper?
I think that the Ripper is really attacking the market, and it's a great boat. I think that it offers more for more people, and it's going to be a better surfer. It's got that great hull, and I think it's going to be a real hit.
Okay, moving on to Full Slice. Describe what the Full Slice is and give us a rundown of these boats.
Sure. So after 3 years of Slicey sterns, I guess it was only a matter of time before the people demanded bow squirts. So grab your Rosies and set your ringback to Kid Rock, because the hot trend of 2018 is Full Slice.
All right, so our players in this game are the Piranha Loki, the Liquid Logic recently released Home Slice, and the Jackson Mixmaster.
Right, and let's just start with the Loki. Just like the Axiom sat quietly in the corner waiting for trends to catch up, Piranha introduced the relatively unnoticed Loki back in 2013. A few Piranha loyalists took notice, but the Loki failed to start a slice revolution. The Loki is a decent offering, but its head start probably won't count for much in the full slice design race. It's really Liquid Logic that has thrown down the gauntlet in the Slicey McBoat war.
Okay, interesting. And so you're feeling strongly that the Home Slice is going to be a better tool.
Yeah, the new Home Slice has something to show for 10 plus years of thoughtful reconsideration. It has all kinds of instant gratification with easy and balanced vertical ends in flat water. Add current for effortless transitions and dynamic moves. It carves well and edges through current for agile downriver performance. It's a boat you can enjoy on day one, and it lets you untap its potential to trade paddle strokes for finesse as you learn to let the river do the work.
Wow. Okay, and then the Mixmaster, the Jackson Mixmaster.
Yeah, the Jackson Mixmaster is really just a slightly modernized EZ with worse outfitting and weaker plastic.
Okay.
Let's start to sense the theme here.
Well, it squirts easily on both bow and stern. Transitioning to that second end is much sloppier in the Mixmaster versus the Home Slice. When vertical, the Mixmaster wants to rotate to a split wheel or pirouette into a face flop more than it wants to give up that clean cartwheel. It throws ends at a noticeably low angle, and it generally doesn't interact gracefully with the river. It requires active paddle control to make moves and just basically sucks the style out of freestyle.
Okay.
How are these boats in terms of comfort? Like if I have to paddle the Golly all day, are any of these boats going to kill my feet like the old Session Plus?
Yeah, that's a good point. Back in the day, Centrifuge, Triple X, you couldn't sit in them for very long.
Yeah, sitting in these boats is a lot more, the modern boats is a lot more comfortable. And I found that in all three of the Loki, the Home Slice, and the Mixmaster. So, you know, if you're not too tall, you can fit in there with shoes and really have a good time.
Interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and rate these full slicers.
Sure, the bottom line is the Home Slice is the clear winner. It's worthy of investing in new technology, while the Mixmaster, by contrast, is worse than most of the decade-old full-slice boats on the secondary market. Until Dagger or somebody else comes late to this party, Liquid Logic stands alone.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well,
man, I love it. Saying it like it is. Like none of us ever could. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the answer. I'm super excited to get out and try some home slicing now. ABRG, would you be interested in sticking around on the show for our Rants and Raves segment?
Sure, I've got plenty of things to rant and rave about.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and open up our Rants and Raves. We here at Liquid Logic would like to share a rave since they are sponsoring the Rants and Raves section. We'd like to rave about Grace, Weld, and Geltman for getting together and making the Hammer Factor happen. It's been a salty, hilarious, and informative ride. We also like to say thanks to the props and thoughts on our boats here on the show. Calling the Brap the boat that saved kayaking is a great compliment, which we didn't think was possible from Weld. And just so you all know, we have a couple more boats coming out this spring. The smaller Delta V, the 73, is coming into production as we speak. If you don't know about the Deltas, they're a cross between the Brap and the Hefway series, a boat that Grace spent a ton of time in. Also coming out this spring is the Home Slice, which we just got a little bit of a review on. Our version of old school Slicey fun, which with modern hulls, modern surf hull, and shoes fitting comfort. Maybe someday Geltman will understand comfort. Cheers, fellas, and keep up the great show. Big thanks to Liquid Logic for sponsoring the Hammer Factor. And before we get into these rants and raves, ABRG, are we going to hear any more reviews? Do you have any plans to bring us anything else in the future?
Well, I've been creeking a bunch this spring. I'd love to come back and give the final word on which creek boats are best for you.
Oh, that'll be great.
I think, this is your America's favorite. You're the most requested segment of the show, I would think.
You have no idea.
Understandably.
All right. Who would like to lead us off here with our rants and raves? Lewis, you had a little rant.
Come on, Gelman. You were fired up.
Come on, lay it out there.
Let's go, man.
Man, I've talked about this before, and I'm just gonna go ahead and rant again about kayak outfitting. It is so fucking shitty. I have a month-old boat, and I snapped the back band in a month, and like that shit is unacceptable. It's like you need to make that shit like it's a climbing harness. If you snap your back band in the middle of doing something consequential, like you could be in like seriously up shit creek. And like I know the guys who are designing these boats and building these boats, they're shit runners, and like they know what's up, and there's no fucking excuse for putting a back band in a boat using shitty flat webbing that's going to snap in a month. It's like just patently unacceptable. And I mean, there's a lot of other things that are like comfort versus performance or whatever, and I obviously have a lot of opinions about that stuff, but like this is a legitimate safety issue, and it's a shitty place to cheap out on your kayak. Like, use some fucking tubular webbing. That's what I got.
Damn, I love it.
Good one. That was a good one. And I agree with that. That's true. Did you crash or something, Lewis? Or was it just normal paddling?
I was just like getting out of my boat and like pushing back on the back band as I was getting out of the boat, and it snapped.
So we were talking about this before the show, and this doesn't really address what you're talking about, but I will say, IR makes a lot of back bands for people, and we have to engineer the back bands to break before the boat will break. Because a lot of times, we'll do an OEM back band for a company, and we'll have to test their seat and stuff and see when the seat's going to tear. And we don't want the seat to get ruined or the bolt hole to pull through the plastic in the top of the boat. And so we'll actually engineer the back band to snap before that.
Do you have a number in mind for like what you consider to be the minimum strength for the whole operation?
Yeah, it's a couple of weak point stuff. It was kind of a crazy test we would do. We would attach. We had one of these industrial scales, and we would tow a dumpster with one of our trucks and put the various back band parts in there and measure when they broke, and then we would gauge that against tearing stuff through various boat holes and boat hulls and seat posts or seat towers and stuff like that.
And was there a point when you would tell the kayak manufacturer you got to make the seat stronger because this is unacceptable? Yeah,
you do. And a lot of times with bigger companies, you're just dealing with a purchasing person or people are like, well, the cost of the boat's is prohibitive for this.
I mean, to me, that's the thing is it's just like whatever the weak point is, the whole system has to be strong enough.
That's right. I guess the point of all this is it needs to be a holistic approach to fixing this problem.
Yeah, I believe you, but I'm just like it's just totally unacceptable.
Right.
Like totally unacceptable.
Okay. All right, I'll jump in here. I'm gonna rant about, and this is off topic. I always have some really weird off topic, but pretty much anytime I'm doing something that annoys me, I think about it, saying it on the show. And I'm going to rant about lawn care. The fact of mowing your grass. That's it. It's just like it just needs to go away. There needs to be something else in place in your yard besides a bunch of grass. I spent 90 minutes mowing my grass. I'll never have that 90 minutes back. It's gone. Gone. So mowing grass sucks. Lawn care sucks.
I'm seeing like a beautiful suburban neighborhood with people just scowling at your jungle-like lawn and watching the real estate values plummet.
Oh, dude, I mow it 4 times a year. I did the first one, and I just am dreading the next 3. It's like time you'll never get back. So I'm just going to rant about growing grass.
I'm going to keep the rants going. I want to rant about boat weight. I've broken one boat in my life, and that was 30 years ago, right? I'm just one of those people, I just don't, I'm not hard on boats. I'd love to get a boat that weighs 30 pounds. Could someone just please make me a rotomolded boat that weighs 30 pounds? Is that so hard? I'll put a composite, shell underneath it to keep the rigidity of the hull, like under the seat. Come on. Shane, help me out, man.
I like
Help me out, brother.
All right. Boat review guy, you want to go ahead and close this down?
Would you trade a reduced warranty for that? Well,
Hell yeah. I've never warrantied a boat.
I've never had a boat last, well, not never, but since I moved to the Northwest, I don't think I've ever had a boat last longer than 8 months.
Rivers are pretty shallow, you're saying? Or what's the problem, you think?
It's manky out there.
Manky, right? It's like rivers got formed about 2 years ago. Just blasted a channel through some mountains, and the water started flowing through it, and boom.
But the thing is, the boats, I mean, it is sharp rock out there, but they don't break on the cuts. They just break from getting flexed under the hull over and over and over again, like in the same way that you break a credit card, Like, I think that's like a common misconception that people see a used boat with a deep scratch in it, and they're like, oh, that's going to crack. But it's never the scratch, and that whatever breaks. It's just the repeated flexing of the hull,
Hey, I know I've got some lightweight boats, and I mean, I'm sure people in the industry would, refute me on this, but like they seem to last just as long as a production weight boat.
Right. Could a customer go to a store and order a Liquid Logic boat that comes in at 20 or 30 pounds, 28 pounds to 32 pounds in special delivery?
I mean, just taking off 6-8 pounds is so rad.
Right?
Composites, dude. I'm telling you.
I don't have the money for composites.
All right, shut us down, ABRG.
What do you got?
All right, well, Mother's Day is coming up, and I could definitely rave about your mom. But I'd rather rave about river moms in general. I poach a lot of shuttles, and there is nothing like poaching a ride with a mom of young children. When I thumb a ride and a minivan with child seats pulls up, I know I've scored.
Andy McMurray, just stop. Just turn off the show right now.
Their vehicles can hold all your stuff and all your buddies. Your dirty river shoes and wet pants are the cleanest things to hit their back seats in weeks. They've got Minions on DVD, and best of all, they always have snacks. If we got more moms out there paddling, I wouldn't have to share the backseat of a Tacoma with 4 stinky dudes ever again. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there running shit and running my shuttles.
All right.
Oh, God.
Well, I'll see you next week, guys.